All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
Thank you, everyone. Please, thank you. It's overwhelming. It's as though I have a button, and if I just keep pressing it, I can hear more applause. That's what it feels like to me. It's unbelievable. I'm overwhelmed. Albert is here today,
Kim,
everybody. And Kim is here.
Albert, thank you.
Yes, we're all excited that the room is filled with life, ebullience, and potential. And John Rothmann joins us today in the first hour. And then Thom Hartmann joins us in the second hour. Yeah. Pretty packed show. Belinda has left us a beautiful video package that we'll run in the second hour as well. There's an awful lot going on. Jimmy Kimmel came back on last night, and I got a serious threat on Instagram.
What?
For saying that I love Jimmy Kimmel, that he's my favorite. And I didn't even bring it up. Tim Conway Jr. asked me on the air, who's your favorite? Or do you like Kimmel? I said, oh, yeah, I love Jimmy. I said, I just think that's the best show. I think it's by far the funniest, and it's by far the most inventive, and I've always liked Jimmy Kimmel. So I say that, and I get an Instagram post about how can you, like, I should read it to you. It's like crazy.
Wow.
You realize how America is so divided. Like, I didn't say anything about, you just, but now, like, what? Saying that I like Jimmy Kimmel is some kind of statement that deserves a clapback. It was just, it's a crazy, but the world is full of crazies. I mean, this current world, I can't find it right this instant. But bottom line is, I thought, wow. I mean, it was so innocuous so as to be forgettable. And yet it was, the kind of thing that somebody took offense. Innocuous is a ding word.
What kind of threat? Like, we're coming after you kind of threat?
No, it wasn't quite that bad. It was just, I don't want to get into basically what he said was, how can you, somebody who said so many awful things about Charlie Kirk or something. And I said,
he didn't, though.
I said, please quote me one thing he said I said, please send me back a quote of one thing that Jimmy Kimmel said about Charlie Kirk that you disagreed with or that you had an issue with. And I said, I know you won't, because he didn't. And of course, I never heard from the guy again.
Sure.
So, but anyway, it was just one of those things. It's great to have Jimmy Kimmel back on, and it was quite the perfect monologue that he did. It addressed the issues at hand. It addressed the freedom of speech issues. It addressed the Kirk issues. It addressed the nation's dividedness, I thought. And also it was, and this is what I think is the genius of Jimmy Kimmel, it was funny. It would be one thing for him just to go on and address all those issues that I described, but it was funny and it was emotional. I mean, it was really something. So we'll get to that in a second. I want to mention this is the Born to Peacefully Protest t-shirt, which you may want. And if you do want it, it's at our merch site, getmarkmerch.com. You can have a t-shirt and purchase it just like I did. I had to buy it also. Born to Peacefully Protest. Also, it's on the mug. I love the new mugs. Got a bunch of them. Born to Peacefully Protest mug, the Born to Peacefully Protest t-shirt. Our logo is on the back of the t-shirts, on the back of the mug. And you can see the Peacefully Resist mug is actually what I'm drinking the Coachella Valley coffee from, even as we speak. So that is our merch site. Knock around on it. You'll find some stuff that you like. It's a little bit different. There's stuff that's just the show. And then there's stuff like, again, Make Love Not Fascism, 1984 and a half, the kind of Orwellian reference, Born to Peacefully Resist. There are a bunch of different patterns. Courtney put it all together, and we're really excited that she worked so hard on it. So getmarkmerch.com. And every time you buy something, I think Courtney jots you a little email that she personally writes out. It's really quite, there are the two stalwart cats. Those are not our cats. Those are a listener /viewer's cats, Choco and Max. and they love the Born to Peacefully Protest shirt, that particular one. So anyway, check it out. It's all rocking at getmarkmerch.com. So,
We had a suggestion actually that came in an after hours trading.
What?
The comments last night from Immortal Tiger. He wants you to do a cup that says a Tylenol a day keeps RFK Jr. away.
oh, that's a very strong offer.
Acetaminophen, commonly known as Tylenol.
We ought to do an acetaminophen cup. You know what I mean?
Acetaminophen,
Right.
commonly known as Tylenol.
I
Do not
love
know
that
what you
idea.
are talking about.
The Tylenol thing is wild. And as we said yesterday, and we predicted, the makers of Tylenol in a very tough spot. By the way, one of the funniest lines from Jimmy Kimmel was, I don't know who's had a weirder 48 hours, me or the CEO of Tylenol.
Yeah, that was pretty good. That was pretty funny.
So they're trying to push back on that which the president and RFK Jr. and Dr. Oz, are were forwarding. And of course, all the madness that Trump was just going off on, in addition to the core madness around Tylenol, the Cuba thing, the Amish thing, it just totally made up, stuff. But we kind of did a pretty good breakdown on it yesterday, I thought. And so if you want to see it, it's, but it's everywhere. There are all sorts of breakdowns. Everybody has pretty well, I think, broken that down for us. And we ran Dr. Daigneault, who's kind of the friend of the show, our doctor. His short on Instagram is pretty, complete in its takedown in just 1 minute's time on the ridiculousness of what was said yesterday about the tie to autism. Trevor Starr in Hollywood, first in with a super chat, says, some guy threatened to punch me in the face the other day because I told him I like the Mark Thompson show.
What?
Oh, my God. Wow. Geez, usually you get a high five. That's kind of scary to get the
Crazy.
punch in the, and Richard Delamater, before we get started, asks, Kamish, how about them Niners? Yeah. Niners just getting it done, huh? Kamish? It's,
Yeah, with scrap parts and loose ends. So
Yeah.
it's good for now. But 3-0 historically, high chances of making the playoffs. So that's looking good.
all right. That's the word from the commissioner's office. So on we go.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Trump is losing it. Donald Trump, my Lord and Savior. You guys have yet to find God, but he is mine. He is angry. He's an angry God, and he's angry over Jimmy Kimmel's return. Jimmy returned, and we'll run a little bit of Jimmy's return, Albert, after I read a bit of this screed from the President of the United States. I can't believe ABC fake news gave Jimmy Kimmel his job back, he said on his social media platform. The White House was told by ABC that his show was canceled. Something happened between then and now because his audience is gone, in capital letters, and his, quote, talent was never there. Why would they want someone back who does so poorly, who's not funny, and who puts the network in jeopardy by playing 99% positive Democrat garbage? Garbage is capitalized. He is yet another arm of the DNC, and to the best of my knowledge, that would be a major illegal campaign contribution. I think we're going to test ABC out on this. Let's see how we do. Last time I went after them, they gave me $16 million. This one sounds even more lucrative. A true bunch of losers, exclamation point. Let Jimmy Kimmel rot in his bad ratings. Well, why don't you let him rot in his bad ratings instead of going after him, Mr. President? And Kimmel had a line about that. He ran the statement from Trump on Air Force One, during which Donald Trump said he has no talent, he has bad ratings, and they came back to Kimmel, who said, well, not such bad ratings tonight, though, huh?
That's right.
It was perfect. But Kimmel has 20 million subscribers on YouTube, says Jeanette. Last night, he had 21.1 million. Oh, so he picked up 1.1 million in just one day. Go figure. Ha ha ha, she says. So I see, went in before this whole thing happened with 20 million. Now he's got 21.1. This is the reality. I mean, just to step back for a moment, and then I'll run some of the Kimmel stuff. The reality is that Donald Trump's not a very popular president. He has a core of support, of course, but now there's a lot of buyer's remorse, even from those who were sort of on the fringe, you know, who kind of bought the BS about helping the economy and all that sort of thing. And now the realities are beginning to encroach upon whatever promise there was. And I'd say in another 6 to 8 months, there'll be an even greater encroachment. You'll really begin to see the darkness of the economic future. Unemployment's going to rise. The dollar's already been devalued. It's down about 10%. It'll be down even more. So everything's going to become more expensive. And inflation and rising unemployment, you'll have a stagflation situation develop in the next year. And then, sadly, that'll just be the state of the state because we're only being, at that point, maybe a year and a half into his administration. So, but the back and forth continues. And I think there's some serious issues involved, of course, and we'll mention them with John Rothmann, associated with the FCC strong-arming ABC, and strong-arming ABC by strong-arming their stations. You remember the station licenses that are associated with all those Sinclair stations and Nexstar stations? Those are things that they very much require FCC approval to maintain, and even more, as we've mentioned before, Nexstar wanted to increase its footprint, its media footprint, by acquiring more stations. It needs FCC approval for that. So when you have the FCC commissioner coming on going, we can do this the easy way or the hard way, and basically this kind of mobster talk and leaning on the Nexstar and Sinclair stations, you see that there is a real sense that government is flexing a muscle to get rid of speech they're not happy with. I mean, the idea that Donald Trump is going after Jimmy Kimmel, went after Colbert, and going after these media companies because he's not happy with the coverage that he's getting from them is in itself not a new concept to the presidency. Obama wasn't happy with the coverage he was getting. Bush wasn't happy with the coverage he was getting. Clinton wasn't happy. The idea that the president pushes back on media and complains about media coverage is not a new one. But the FCC and the president of the United States openly leaning on media companies and threatening to essentially sideline them by pulling their licenses, that's a new one. Here's a little bit of Jimmy last night. I don't know what clip Albert has up first, but just a couple of quick moments from Kimmel.
Conditions for my return to the air, and there is one. Disney has asked me to read the following statement, and I agreed to do it. Here we go. To reactivate your Disney Plus and Hulu account. Open the Disney Plus app on your smart TV or TV connected device. I've been.
That's good stuff. That's good stuff. I mean, again, so many didn't want to see him kowtow and bend the knee, and he didn't. And there were poignant moments. I mean, he choked up as he talked about Charlie Kirk. He talked about Charlie Kirk's family. And, Kimmel's the real thing. He, as I've mentioned to you before, has become emotional on a number of issues associated with healthcare and America's healthcare issues. I talked about the fact that his son needed a heart operation. He went on the air after the successful heart operation. This is for a newborn or a young, very, very young child. And Jimmy said, thank you all, essentially, he said, for all the support. He said, it just is worth noting that we had the means to save our son, but there are many families in America that did not and do not. And that is something that is wrong, and we have to fix that in this country. And he choked up as he said it. I mean, Jimmy is in my judgment, he's the real thing all the way. And so I think you see in him, when he displays emotion, real sincere emotion.
It's what makes him so likable, I think. And so able to connect with people, because he just comes off as so genuine.
It comes off also, I'd say, as kind of like a very approachable everyman thing that he has going, which is real. I think he is really that guy. And I also think, De Niro was great in the sketch that followed. Yeah. But I also think that, lastly, when he makes these statements, he's not on the bully pulpit. You know, he's not in your face. He just is. There's an ease about his manner. You know, but he's just more than anything so very funny. We have one other clip, and this is, I think, pure funny. So go ahead, Albert.
The FCC has a tradition of meddling where they shouldn't under many administrations, but it wasn't always like this. There was an FCC commissioner back in 2022 who worked under Joe Biden, who was spot on. He wrote, "President Biden is right. Political satire is one of the oldest and most important forms of free speech. It challenges those in power while using humor to draw more people into the discussion. That's why people in influential positions have always targeted it for censorship." You know who wrote that? FCC Commissioner Brendan Carr, who later was appointed chairman of the FCC by this former crusader for free speech.
If we don't have free speech, then we just don't have a free country. It's as simple as that. If this most fundamental right is allowed to perish, then the rest of our rights and liberties will topple, just like dominoes, one by one. They'll go down.
That was also in 2022. And I wonder, how did that guy turn into this guy?
Who would you like to see replace Kimmel on late night?
Well, a lot of people, anybody could replace him. The guy had no talent. Kimmel he was fired. He had no talent. He's a whack job, but he had no talent. And more importantly than talent, he had no, because a lot of people have no talent, they get ratings. But he had no ratings.
Well, I do tonight. The President of the United States made it very clear he wants to see me and the hundreds of people who work here fired from our jobs. Our leader celebrates Americans losing their livelihoods because he can't take a joke. The FCC.
There is a weird thing that is happening in MAGA country. It's just odd to me. I mean, they always talk about the snowflakes, but man, they just can't take anything. It's an extraordinary fact. It even happened at the UN yesterday. Yeah. My God. I don't know what, I guess the reality on the UN stuff is, you know, they're talking about the escalator that didn't work. We showed you the video of that yesterday. And then the prompter didn't work. Well, it turns out the escalator situation was the result of one of his advance people hitting the button. Kim shared that with us yesterday. And then the prompter was also being run by one of his people. So again, you know, the trail of breadcrumbs, it seems, leads back to them, but it's as though they break something and then they complain that it's broken. The same thing is happening, of course, at the governmental level, right? They are dismantling government and then complaining that the checks aren't on time. You know, it's quite consistent.
So can we just go back to that escalator thing for a minute? Because there's a story about this, that the UN is blaming Trump's videographer, as you mentioned, but the White House is now suggesting that the escalator mishap doesn't look like a coincidence. The Trump and company says the UN did it on purpose. Somehow that, you know, that they did it to spoil their Christmas or something. I don't know. Yeah.
It's not fake. That's real.
Someone did this to spoil our Christmas.
Yeah. Caroline Levitt floating a different explanation, writing in a post on X. This is what she wrote. If someone at the UN intentionally stopped the escalator as the president and first lady were stepping on, they need to be fired and investigated immediately.
Yeah. I mean,
Really?
this is what I'm talking about, though. It sounds as though they are the reason this whole thing happened. They're the reason for the escalator not working. They're the reason for the prompter not working. And now they're going to build a conspiracy that has nothing to do with them. It's insane. Blame the lefties.
She shared a screenshot from a Times of London article that said UN workers had been overheard joking that they might intentionally shut off escalators during Trump's visit, and then blame funding shortfalls for it. And there's no evidence apparently that UN staff followed through on those jokes, but now it's become somewhat of a conspiracy in the White House.
Well, here's the serious part of this. The U.S. under Donald Trump has pulled way back from the UN, and it is true that the funds associated with the UN, I talked a little bit about this yesterday, are really one of the big things supporting the UN. So they're on their 80th anniversary that they're celebrating, if you will, that bring all of these different nations together regularly. The UN, very flawed institution. We can talk more about it with John Rothmann. They depend so much on support, economic support from the Americans, and the Americans aren't there with that support anymore. So as things fall apart from an infrastructure standpoint, escalator, prompter not working, whatever. As I say, in this case, I think these explanations are really quite simple, but Trump was sort of in his remarks to the General Assembly, suggesting that it was the fact that the place is falling apart, Yeah. And I could have made this place better if you'd given me the contract when I had bid on this long ago.
Yeah.
Well, the reality is that America has pulled a lot of the money that's associated with the UN, and maybe some of that, could trickle down to the infrastructure. I don't know. Again, this seems like it's one of these simple explanations that's now being turned into a big thing, but Trump did make a big deal out of it yesterday in his remarks. So I watched some of Fox News Channel and their coverage of the UN, and they were all suggesting that there was something nefarious going on. They were also suggesting that there couldn't possibly be the three things that happened. There was a third thing that happened. The chances of these three things happening, or this constellation of events happening, is like, winning the lottery and getting bitten by a shark at the same time. It was that kind of thing. They had a guest on who actually said that. And so it's been concocted, I think, as something that it just isn't. I mean, it sounds to me like the explanation is pretty benign, pretty straightforward. So, hi, Mark and Kim. Did you see Melania's face at the escalator? Priceless. Yeah. She shouldn't have to walk if she doesn't have to, Yeah, thank you for the $5 super chat. Appreciate that.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I did it. I hit the stop button, says Stephen. Oh, wow. It's good. It's nice that one of our people.
My bad. I'm sorry.
It takes responsibility. How dare you? All right. I wanted to quickly cover a couple of other things before I get to John Rothmann, but we did want to give Jimmy Kimmel's return plenty of airplay. And by the way, in the aftermath of the Charlie Kirk murder, officials in Oklahoma apparently are going to have turning point chapters at all their high schools.
Wow.
It's pretty wild. The state superintendent in Oklahoma announcing plans to put Turning Point USA chapters in every high school.
In case you don't get enough MAGA at home, they want to make sure you get MAGA in school. Get them early, Mark. Get them early.
If you're so worried about indoctrination, I don't understand why this kind of blatant indoctrination is not going to become a part of public policy. But they say this indoctrination is going to counter the radical leftist teachers union woke indoctrination.
Oh,
That's a quote.
sure.
Radical leftist teachers union woke indoctrination. So
Is there a counter group, like a lefty group, that could be at every high school too? What do you call them?
this is really an interesting thing that you've pointed to or asked or implied in that question. Just after the first hour is done, we'll get into the second hour with Thom Hartmann. And it's one of the things we talk about. Thom Hartmann and I are on at roughly the same time, so we had to tape it yesterday. And we talk about the fact that the left doesn't have an organization like Turning Point USA, like so many of the organizations that are on the right. There just isn't the organizational silo that you will find on the right, on the left. And so you also don't have that instinct. Now, you have, again, just two very different visions of America and of freedom of speech and of history, you know. And so those are played out, I think, in many different ways. in the world of academics. But in this case, to your question, there just isn't. There just isn't something there that is the equivalent of Turning Point USA.
It feels like when you have a Turning Point USA that you need to gather to I don't know, kind of assemble a group where you can share your views and your, I'll say it, lies. You know, you need to tell people something specific, whereas the left, it's, and perhaps I'm coming at this based on my own ideology.
Well, you're definitely coming at it from a bias. Yeah, I would say
it's based on truth. So why would you need a special group to push the truth when the truth is already everywhere? Hopefully, true things are being taught about history, about everything else in high school. So why would you need a special group to push what's already known?
Well, let me just represent, for the sake of argument, you have that position because you're saying it's truth, but it's your truth. Okay. And you can say, what are you talking about? It is the truth. It is the truth that there were slaves. It is the truth that, you know, America's history is punctuated by all of these very troubling events. They have to be included. Of course, I agree with you, but they would say, no, but the way you've cast America as this sort of evil force, it has really played down the best of America. I don't know exactly what they'd say, but it might be something in that neighborhood. So what I agree with you, of course, but what I would say is that typically Democrats, they would get voter registration going in areas, in place of like Turning Point USA, they would get voter registration going. Now, by the way, Turning Point USA would get voter registration going too, so I don't want to disparage them in that way. But at a high school level, you can't get voter registration because typically high schoolers are a little too young yet to vote. So maybe seniors.
Here's where you're wrong. When you're 16, you go to the DMV and get your driver's license, and that's when you pre-register to vote.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
So I know that because
but I mean, if that's done at the DMV, then
then
there's no need to do it on a high school campus.
But they want all the high schoolers to know it, so there's signs everywhere saying pre-register to vote at the DMV. Yeah, and seniors often are just ready to turn 18, so then there's another push for seniors to register to vote as well.
The Turning Point USA chapters, though, that's a real effort to get information of a certain kind, and so you'd have to have a corresponding presence on the part of the left. And there are organizations, I don't want to suggest that they're not there, but I don't think they have quite the muscle that Turning Point USA. That's one of the things about Charlie Kirk that was so amazing, that he was able to create this organization that became so robust. I don't think there's anything quite like that on the left in terms of turning out young people who've typically gone toward the Democratic Party. But that is changing, as we have seen in poll after poll. I want to get to John Rothmann. Before I do, I just want to...
The Mark Thompson Show.
We like to keep track of stuff that's going on in the courts and out. This is Law and Disorder.
In the criminal justice system, the people,
pimps, addicts, thieves, bums, winos, girls who can't keep an address, and men who don't care,
are represented by two separate yet equally important groups.
A cop, a flatfoot, a bull, a dick, John Law. You're the fuzz, the heat, you're poison, you're trouble, you're bad news.
These are their stories.
50 world leaders prepared to descend on Manhattan for the UN General Assembly. The U.S. Secret Service was quietly dismantling a massive hidden telecom network across the New York area. It was a system that investigators say could have crippled cell towers, jammed 911 calls, and flooded networks with chaos at the very moment the city was most vulnerable. The cache, made up of more than 300 SIM servers packed with over 100,000 SIM cards and clustered within 35 miles of the United Nations, represents one of the most sweeping communications threats uncovered on U.S. soil. Investigators warn the system could have blacked out cellular service in New York. This is a city that relies on that cellular service not only for daily life, but of course for emergency response and for counterterrorism. This all coming as foreign leaders filled Midtown hotels, motorcades clogging Manhattan. Officials say that takedown highlights a new frontier of risk. Plots aimed at invisible infrastructure that keeps a modern city connected. pretty big work done by the Secret Service. A man is freed after 38 years. That's right. It happened in Inglewood, California. Wrongful conviction. He was freed after 38 years. That happened. But the other thing that happened is that finally he received something for having essentially had his life taken from him. $25 million is what he will receive.
Wow.
And he says, while this doesn't fill the gap and make up for the fact that much of my life was taken for no reason, it does do something and produce some closure. Apparently, he's spending more time with his church in his remaining years. Sean Diddy Combs is now sued for assault and battery by his ex-stylist. This ex-stylist testified during the trial. This whole thing is happening a week before the hip-hop mogul is scheduled to be sentenced on prostitution-related charges. And, you know, this is a critical period because Sean Combs, through lawyers, is representing this isn't as bad as was being made out. He's not a threat to society anymore. Go easy on him, in other words, in terms of the sentencing. But now he's facing a new lawsuit from this former personal stylist. The stylist alleges that the rapper and music mogul subjected him to a nightmare of sexual, physical, and psychological abuse. It lasted a decade. Deontay Nash, quote, endured constant unreasonable demands and expectations, forced tests of loyalty and manipulation, sexual harassment and sexual assaults, physical violence and manhandling, labor trafficking, threats of harm, and threats of death.
That sounds like a fun job.
Nash testified against Combs during that 8-week federal racketeering and sex trafficking trial this summer, and he was acquitted of those charges, Combs was, though he was convicted on those 2 counts of interstate prostitution. That's why I'm saying the timing of this is not optimal for Combs. He's scheduled to be sentenced October 3rd. He pleaded not guilty to all charges during the trial. And we'll know more when that other trial begins. But again, Sean Diddy Combs now being sued for assault and battery by his ex-stylist who testified during the original trial. And finally, Ryan Root is found guilty of trying to assassinate Donald Trump at his Florida golf course. If you missed it, I believe Kim mentioned this story yesterday. Mm-hmm. After a 2-week trial, a jury took just 2 hours to convict Ryan Routh. How did you say it, Kim? Root or Routh?
I said Routh, but you know he represented himself at trial. That's never a good idea. He never you always want the professional to sit next to you. You never want to try to take this on your own.
Yeah.
Your Honor, I'd like to ask for a recess.
Yeah, that was the first thing you go. Your Honor, I'd like to ask for a recess.
No.
What's the adage about that? Anyone who decides to represent themselves in a court of law has a fool for a client.
Oh.
That's what's said to kind of underscore the fact that you shouldn't represent yourself.
Because
anyway, the plot on that.
Because of your dad, you have all the good, the lawyerisms. That's
yeah,
great.
and maybe I don't know. Maybe he gave me that or not. I don't remember. But apparently, he tried to, but he's now convicted, so we don't have to say apparently. He tried to assassinate Donald Trump on a Florida golf course last year. It was a plot undone by the Secret Service. A Secret Service agent spotted him, fired a shot that sent him running. Chaos ensued in the courtroom shortly after he was found guilty, Kim. 7 women, 5 men found him guilty, but Routh tried to stab himself in the neck with a pen.
Problem is, it was one of those jail pens that are flexible. They give them to the prisoners on purpose so they can't hurt themselves or anyone else with them.
Oh, man, stabbing yourself as you get the guilty plea. It's a wild idea, but it just might work. Yeah. It was chaos in the courtroom, as you can imagine. After order was restored, Routh was brought before U.S. District Judge Eileen Cannon. Remember her? Yeah. He was shackled, no longer in the jacket and tie that he wore while representing himself at the trial. And The 59-year-old apparently spent weeks plotting to kill Trump before aiming a rifle through shrubbery, and then the Trump foursome played golf while this guy was training his rifle on them. But just in the nick of time, I believe it was just literally in the nick of time, the Secret Service agent spotted him and fired that shot that sent him running.
They saw the long gun sticking through the hole in the fence. Remember that? Yeah.
You know, when you bring the long gun, it's I'm glad that they got him, and glad that, I'm glad that nothing happened. But he does sound like, again, I put everybody who tries to commit political violence like this in the wacko category. Yeah. He's an extreme wacko, and the guy who killed Charlie Kirk's an extreme wacko. They're all extreme wackos. They represent nothing, but I'm sure radicalized in some way, but wacko nonetheless, with all too much access to weapons. That is law and disorder.
Tune in again next time for more Law and Disorder on The Mark Thompson Show.
All right, that's it. Let's roll. Hey, let's be careful out there.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Becky E., $55. Are you kidding? She sends a $55 super chat in, and she says, more importantly, celebrating my birthday today.
Woohoo!
Thanks for making all my days remarkable. I get it. Yes. And big shout out to you, Becky. Birthday shout out, my dear.
Yeah.
Yeah, really, really cool.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your generous offering. 55, baby. Yeah. The best. Little wisdom, and you still got a whole lot ahead. All right. Without any further delay, let me do it. Do I have any other? Oh no, I'm way late. Let me get to Rothmann right away, because
what he's got going here is a situation.
I've got a situation going. So let me get to Rothmann, and we'll handle. I'll handle all the comments at the top of the hour.
The Mark Thompson Show.
This man is a lecturer and author, our former colleague from KGO Radio, a presidential historian. He is the wonderful John Rothmann. John, did you see the president's remarks at the UN yesterday?
I did.
Thoughts?
Appalled. Appalled on every level. If you go back and you take a look at what presidents traditionally say when they speak to the United Nations, and you can go back to Dwight Eisenhower for the exemplar, really the best comments, Donald Trump is the antithesis of all the things that are proper, and you could see it in the response of the people in the audience at the UN. I have a very close relationship with the United Nations. I am the biographer of Harold Stassen, who really was the author of the UN Charter and was he was the last living signer of the UN Charter. And it's not that the criticisms that Donald Trump leveled about its certain failings in international relations aren't true. It is that Donald Trump has, in fact, as you pointed out on your program, cut more money from the United Nations, and it will make it very hard for the UN to function. And there are revisions that are needed. Governor Stassen wrote a book recommending revisions in the charter, including the veto power on the Security Council. But all I can tell you is I was embarrassed to have Donald Trump stand before the world and represent our country the way he did.
There was a quality I thought that was quite extraordinary associated with the you all don't know what you're doing. Look at what I'm doing in America in just 8 months.
Don't forget all the peace treaties. Don't forget 7 treaties, which of course is pure rubbish.
Right. And there in that as well was the notion that you all need to abandon sustainable energy. You need to abandon alternative energy. There was a real broadside to alternative energy and a suggestion.
Well, you understand there's no such thing as global warming. There never has been. And climate change, this doesn't exist. And when you consider Donald Trump's scientific bona fides are so incredibly deep and wide, coming from him, it really means something or nothing.
I see Trump, and I'm wondering about you, as someone who clearly is looking at every situation as how can this be good for me or how can this be bad for me? Who in this room can help me and who in this room is not important to me? And as I listened to his speech at the UN, I saw the transactional side of Donald Trump. You know, the idea somehow that some of you in this room we can do business with, the others we can't. And I'm telling you that right up front. He basically said, you know, if you want to do business with us, you can. And if you don't, you know, then you got bad futures ahead. And you have so many of these smaller countries, John, who likely will come and abandon whatever values, strategies for the future associated with sustainable energy, et cetera, they might have had just so they can get help from the United States.
They really have no alternative. The United States plays a central role. If you've been following the story on the elimination of AID, you know that the human tragedy being accumulated around the world because of the actions of Donald Trump are real and genuine. I was embarrassed by his presentation, but I did flip on to listen to Sean Hannity yesterday, literally word for word, defending the president on everything he said. And I regret that we were not on the air to do the appropriate critique that most assuredly we would have provided on KGO.
Well, what I would say is that they claim, because I watched a bit of Fox News as well, just curious how they were handling it. They claim that, you know, finally you have an American president who is speaking the truth at the UN. And you don't want to hear it, all you UN members, but what Donald Trump is saying is the truth.
Yeah, I'm not surprised at all. I'm sure he also told the truth about Tylenol. I mean, you know, this is a man with a vast experience in medical science. And if he makes a statement about Tylenol and autism, it must be true. Can I drip my remarks with greater sarcasm than I already have? I mean, it's humiliating, it's sad, it's disgusting. And it doesn't matter that the whole scientific community, indeed the whole world community, objects to things Donald Trump says, because, Mark, remember this, he's always right.
Well, that is exactly what he said at the UN. He said he was always right, and he said there was a hat that Trump was right about everything hat that was part of his campaign and now is a part of his administration and, you know, is handed out at various events. And it was interesting that Joel Rubin, who's the former State Department official under Obama, so you can imagine he was not happy, but he, you know, has done a lot with the UN and been in and around the UN a lot. And he really, he said it was bonkers, out of control. I mean, again, you know, mocking the UN to its face.
I agree.
Yeah,
it is bonkers. It is out of control. And it was a destructive speech. And we will reap the whirlwind.
Well, that's really what I want. That's really what I wanted to get to, because he was saying, I found it incredibly damaging to America's standing in the world, damaging to our national security strategy, and damaging to how other countries are now going to deal with us, which means they're just going to move further and further away as this kind of communication and leadership continues. This is what I wanted to get to, John, because it's not just shock and it's not just disappointment and it's not just disgust with what was said, but there is a ripple effect. I mean, the statement made by a guy who is heading the most powerful nation on earth has a true effect on the future. And I wonder if you could speak to that.
Well, it goes to the point I've made repeatedly for years. Who is president of the United States matters. And Donald Trump, frankly, is a disgrace. And I know that there are Trump supporters out there who will be very upset with me for saying it. But can you imagine? It's not just the UN. It's not just Tylenol. It's an accumulation of things that come out every single day. By the way, he doesn't make any secret of the fact that he wants the Justice Department, his Attorney General, to begin persecuting and prosecuting his enemies. Mark, have we gotten to the point where a president can have an enemies list, implement what he says he wants to do, and there's no outcry? I listened to John Toon, who is the Republican leader in the Senate today, on television, and he was trying in a way to defend what Donald Trump was doing. And I thought to myself, if Bob Taft or Ev Dirksen or Howard Baker previous Republican leaders in the Senate, Bob Dole, if they were alive, they'd be rolling over in their graves. They wouldn't grasp for a moment. We have coming up a potential government shutdown. And of course, that also has to do with the fact that Trump says he won't talk to the Democratic leadership in the House and Senate. It's short-sighted. He deserves the blame. And as you reported in our previous conversation before we went on the air, there is a congressional race which was just run. And not only did the Democrats win, but they won by 20 points over what had happened in that district previously. I think, and I know a lot of people dismiss what I'm saying, but I believe I'm right. There is a reaction building among the American people, and rightly so.
Oh, I think most certainly there's a reaction building. The question is how that reaction manifests, and will it make a difference in a system that has been so dismantled and likely will continue to be dismantled to the point that you may not have a legitimate vote in the future. But
if we don't have a legitimate midterm election in November, we're in big trouble. I like to remind people, in 1942, there was a suggestion made that we postpone the midterm elections because of World War II having broken out. And the reaction of Democrats and Republicans alike was, we don't fiddle with our election system in this country. And I hope that remains the case.
Now, the reaction would not be, I think, typified by that kind of a unified response, Democrats and Republicans. It would be, it's like, let's stop the music if we're ahead type thing. That's
exactly.
really where the same thing that Trump said when he said, stop the vote, stop the counting, stop the counting. When he was ahead, they still had a bunch of counting to do. He said, yeah, that's it. Let's call it right now. I mean, it is laughable were it not so serious. Last thing I would just say, because this is a repetitive theme with Donald Trump, is he talked about $17 trillion worth of investment in America. That was what he mentioned at the UN. He's mentioned in a lot of other places. That's total fiction. Okay, let's just get that on the table. That is a ridiculous figure pulled right out of the ether, just like all the other figures, the $2 trillion that has already come into America based on the tariffs. That is also total fiction. I want everybody to understand that. The figure that is associated with tariff revenue is $150 billion, okay? And I'm being generous with that, but that's the number. It's not $2 trillion. So these trillion numbers that he's throwing around, they, and he always makes a point, and it's trillion with a T. It throws you off the scent of what is the real information, which I think is significant,
I agree with you 100%.
All right, now I want to get to the FCC and the strong arming of Kimmel. He was back on the air last night, and you saw from the president a threatening once again of ABC. He talked about the fact that he may have to sue them again. He referenced specifically their $16 million settlement. Give me a thought about that and the FCC chairman, who now seems to want to shake down these Sinclair and Nexstar stations for actions that he wants to see that are favorable to the administration.
In normal times, this would be an impeachable offense. The President of the United States is violating the Constitution. The chairman of the FCC is doing the same thing. These are not normal times, and therefore we simply have to expose them in every way we can, and that's why people should support the Mark Thompson program. And yes, my podcast. We talk about these things, we repeat these things, and we just have to keep doing it. You played Ted Cruz yesterday, I believe, or the day before, and his comments, which are entirely
Ted Cruz, Albert, the Cruz comments where he and Kimmel even referenced Ted Cruz. Did you hear it, John, last night? Cruz was referenced by Kimmel, and Cruz is saying, hey, I don't like Jimmy Kimmel. I'd be happy to see him taken off the air, but he has the right to say whatever he wants.
Yeah, whatever you think of Ted Cruz, and I am not a big fan, although it's true I coined the expression during the presidential campaign, let's put the country on cruise control. I want everybody to understand.
Wait a minute. Where did you coin that phrase? Where?
On the radio, and public speeches all across the country.
Well, when you were campaigning for what?
When I was asked to give commentary and discuss the presidential campaign.
But why would you say something that is positive toward Ted Cruz if you don't like him?
Because I wanted people to understand how ridiculous Ted Cruz is. But that's a whole other issue.
I'll tell you what that is, and I'm calling it out. That was just you reaching for some play on words, is what that was. How dare you brag about that?
Go ahead. Excuse me. May I point out, you and I have done that for years on the radio. This to me is absolutely critical. This is a battle for freedom of speech. The battle is not over. I believe he's just fired the opening shots, as you reported, or Kim reported. Donald Trump's put out another post saying that he's shocked that Kimmel will be put back on the air. Look, all I can tell you is this is a lesson about authoritarianism, about the danger of Donald Trump. Let me just indicate to you, because I know you've gone over the vaccine thing repeatedly, the fact that the person in charge of public health in this country is a vaccine denier and someone who is now criticizing Tylenol with no scientific basis.
Well, it's more than criticizing it. He's tying it to
autism,
a condition that has really been the scourge of many
families. This is a disgrace. But remember, Mark, this is the same president who, at the height of COVID, said just drink bleach.
Yeah,
which people don't remember. The fact that I had a discussion with somebody I have great regard for, who said, all you do is criticize Donald Trump. And I said, you're absolutely right, because every day he says something else that is egregious, that is criticizable, and that is wrong. And I think unless it's called out, we're in big trouble. By the way, you heard Senator Thune today, who was the leader of the Republicans, who was asked directly about some of these issues. He tried to skate it a little bit because he didn't want to have a broil with the White House. But when he was asked about a third term for Trump, he at least was clear and precise. The Constitution won't allow it. And I think that also is very important for people.
Yeah, you're right. That's not nothing. I mean, that matters. So
J.D. Vance is on the road to becoming the Republican nominee for president.
And J.D. Vance is joined by Peter Thiel, who really animated his entire political career. For those who don't know, essentially, Thiel had hired Vance in a couple of different positions at his companies and then moved Vance into the Senate race. He put $7 million into the Senate race, and J.D. Vance prevailed in the Senate race. And of course, that put him in scoring position for the vice presidency. And now he is vice president, soon to be president, I think, when Trump vacates that seat, as John has mentioned. So that's kind of the origin story, at least the short-term origin story on J.D. Vance, politically anyway.
Right. And J.D. Vance, the other two people who were instrumental in his advancement were the president's son, Donald Trump Jr., and the president's other son, Eric. And somebody asked me yesterday who I thought J.D. Vance would take for vice president. And I said, don't rule out Donald Trump Jr. I believe the Republicans would absolutely go for that. It's a way of keeping Donald Trump alive and in the presence. So these are all matters that need to be discussed, but I know we have limited time. I just want people to understand, whether it's domestic affairs, foreign affairs, wherever it may be, what shocked me, having worked for Richard Nixon and having witnessed this firsthand, is when a president of the United States instructs his attorney general to prosecute his enemies, and there is no reaction from the Republicans. It is, to me, appalling. And I can guarantee you, when all the indictments of Trump are presented and so forth, the real indictment needs to be presented against the Republican Party for acquiescing. Because if we're going to have a viable two-party system, we really have to get with it. May I just say a word about Gavin Newsom very quick? I know we're running out of time. You never give me enough time, Mark.
Yeah, well, it's funny. We think we give you too much time, but okay, we disagree about that. But go ahead.
Complaint. I just want to point out to you that Gavin Newsom is now making Prop 50 the only measure on the ballot, a critical test of support for Trump or opposition to Trump. By the way, you saw that
Explain what Prop 50 is, please.
Prop 50 has to do with our ability to redistrict in an off year.
It's the answer to Texas, essentially.
Yeah, it is and Missouri. And Missouri.
But the reality is what about Prop 50 in California?
It is a test of Gavin Newsom.
And it's also it doesn't have the awareness that right now, based on early polling, it doesn't have the awareness that it needs.
I know, but if they're going to devote money to this, and it's the only measure on the California ballot, it is the only measure.
There's a fortune being devoted to knocked down. The no on 50, as you know, the media blitz is real. I mean, let me,
that's one plank in his platform. The next plank in his platform has to do with the legislation he signed last weekend saying you can't wear a mask if you are an ICE agent. What Gavin Newsom is doing, whether you're a fan or not, is cobbling together a platform on which he can stand saying, I haven't just talked, I have acted. And that to me is going to be an important part of his campaign for the Democratic nomination for president.
The feds can Bigfoot any legislation in California about the masks, right, John?
Theoretically.
I mean, theoretically, or legally, right?
It depends. There would then be a court case and testing it. But remember, and I hate to keep bringing up history, our Civil War was fought over federal rights versus state rights. And in this case, most of us, I believe, here in California, hope that the state's position will prevail. But it is a battle between the same concept, popular sovereignty, the right of a state to determine whether it will be slave or free in those days. But this is on the question of reapportionment. Traditionally, reapportionment comes about after the census. So every 10 years, there's reapportionment. What is happening now is unprecedented. And what is even more unprecedented is the plan the Texas legislature adopted wasn't written by the Texas legislature. It was written by Donald Trump. And he's very proud of that fact. So the question of states' rights and national rights is going to be a critical question.
But that reapportionment thing, you kind of jumped the tracks on me. I was asking you about the masks, and you said, well, that's down. And you're right. It comes down to state rights. I was just curious how you handicap that. It seems like
same thing with masks.
Right, same thing, different
same principle. Right. But you understand, these are real issues. And what will be interesting with the Supreme Court, which I would remind you, reconvenes in just a week and a half, the real question with the Supreme Court is, will they uphold the idea of separation of powers? Will they uphold the question of states' rights or federal rights? And the Republicans traditionally are states' rights people. But I think in this case, the odds are they will side with Donald Trump in a political move.
I think so as well. Becky E., whose birthday it is.
Happy birthday, Becky.
I'll give her this question. Rural hospitals in Northern California are already slated for closing thanks to Donald Trump, she says. And these are MAGA areas. And hopefully they'll figure out that they are about to be in danger as a result of his policy.
That's happening throughout the areas that Donald Trump carried heavily, because they are the most dependent on federal programs, as we all know. So if there are these major cuts, let me remind you that Donald Trump's major cuts do not go into effect until after the midterm elections.
Yeah,
and believe me, that is precisely what they have in mind.
That's exactly right. Super clever of them. John,
would you mind calling my wife and saying I'm absolutely right?
You are super clever, super smart. She knows it. And by now, it's too late for her to turn back. I am telling you that John will be here most Wednesdays, but apparently there's some Wednesday he can't make it in October, but it's not for a few weeks, so don't worry about it. He'll be back next Wednesday. It can be found on thevoicesf.org, thevoicesf.org, and his podcast is Around the Political World with John Rothmann. It's a daily dose of Rothmann magic. Love running around the schoolyard with you, John.
Thank you. And I want to close by urging people to support the Mark Thompson program. You can see now the importance of free speech more than ever. And believe me, Mark, if the president could do it, he'd yank you off the air and he'd yank me off the air too. So we have an obligation to support each other. So support the Mark Thompson program.
Thank you so much, my friend. John Rothmann, everybody. All right, right. Yeah, Happy New Year, right, exactly. Happy New Year,
ladies and gentlemen.
All the Jewish boys and girls.
Yeah. This is the Mark Thompson Show. Keep it to yourself.
Right. I mean, between the rapture and the Jewish New Year, I mean, there's a lot going on this week. I don't know whether to,
Isn't this the final day of the rapture talk? Like, this is it? If it doesn't happen today,
who's closest to being a rapture? Albert, do you follow the rapture? I feel like today was the last day. I think Kim's right. Tuesday was. It'll either be, I'd heard, Tuesday or Wednesday is what I'd heard.
Right.
Is that more or less right? Have you heard
sure someone in the chat will smartly correct
maybe somebody in the
us.
chat who's more rapture centric than we are.
You would think the rapture would be a morning situation, not an evening situation. So I think we're safe now.
Well, that's the kind of, you're not a believer. I can tell.
Kim, how are you?
Because that's something that a non-believer would say. I mean, the idea is there's no, I would think that it would be in the morning, not the evening. Right. That's not, you're just creating.
You really kind of, pack a punch to start the day.
Yeah.
My words upset so many people.
Yeah.
Or maybe they'll give us one last peaceful, calm day to enjoy.
That's the thing, before you go on to eternal peace and eternal calm and magic. There was a single mom crying on TikTok that she sold her house and car. Not sure if it's real, but seemed to be believable. Wow, says West.
There's been a lot of those on TikTok, so people are freaking out during these times.
It just seems to me like a reach. If the rapture doesn't happen, let me just again, born to peacefully born to peacefully resist and born to peacefully protest. We have both T-shirts at getmarkmerch.com. And I love because I'm into coffee mugs, so I love the Peacefully Resist coffee mug, and it has our show logo on the backside. And there's one that has the show logo like this, and then there's another that has the kind of bigger show logo, if you like that. These are two different designs. But there it is, the mug and the T-shirt. And, again, let's face it, at least at this point, rapture hasn't shown up. May as well look good, send a message, and drink out of a coffee cup that sends the right message.
If you are wearing the shirt or drinking from the mug, do you think that would mean that you would get sucked up to heaven, or would you get left behind?
I don't know. I think it wouldn't matter. I think it falls into the not, Oh, there's a Project 1984 and a half mug. I didn't know that. That's very cool. I love Project 1984 and a half. Excuse me. 1984, of course, the George Orwell book. So this being Project 1984 and a half with a growing surveillance state that is going to police speech and all the rest, it seems like this is Project 1984 and a half that we're living through. So I really like it. But whatever you do, fill that coffee cup with Coachella Valley coffee. What coffee goes best with the rapture? Asked John Rothmann. Well, your Coachella Valley coffee, goes best with any occasion. I mean, I usually get the 2-pound bag. Sometimes I get a 5-pound bag, so I think that's some of the best value with the 10% off discount, Mark T, at checkout. But if you're really counting on the rapture, I just get a 1-pound bag because no need to get the 2, or leave the other. You can get a 2-pound bag or a 5-pound bag, leave it behind for the non-believers who will be behind, and do something nice for the non-believers. That's all I'm saying. I mean, that's a way to game out the rapture. Everybody's so about themselves during the rapture. Why don't you think about the other people left behind? Anyway, that's the Clarity Blend is my fave, but there is a half calf. There are a lot of teas and spices. It's really a magical place. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Mark T at checkout for 10% off. Only other thing I'll ask you to do is smash that like button like a boss
with your iron rod.
Helps us in the world of YouTube to get more thumbs up. What happens is essentially you get to a threshold, then they'll serve our show to people who don't even know the show exists. And I'll make the point, because I just saw some numbers on the show. Most of the viewers who come to this show come through YouTube. In other words, it's served to them. And they go, oh, well, check it out. And then they hang out and we'll get a subscriber or whatever. And the show is free. We're an NPR PBS model, so the show is free. Live show, 11 to 1 on the West Coast, 2 to 4 on the East Coast, every day, Monday through Friday. And then we are an audio podcast on Spotify and on iHeartRadio, and also the audio podcast on Apple Podcasts, and any place that podcasts are carried. We provide the show for free as an audio offering. And thank you to everybody who's part of our Patreon and PayPal community. We run the names of everybody who is part of the monthly effort to support the show through Patreon and PayPal. They run at the end of every show because you guys make every show happen. So do appreciate that. And You can, if you want to join that community, find the click-throughs under all our videos, Patreon and PayPal. There are live click-throughs under every video. And also you can go to themarkthompsonshow.com and find them. All right. Release the acetaminophen file, says Tom Graves. That's right.
Acetaminophen, commonly known as Tylenol.
Yeah, release those files. Big Tuna says with a $5 super chat, hey, Mark, Kim, and Albert, did you guys see the article about the Epstein and Trump statue in D.C. holding hands in front of the Capitol building? Not only did I see it, I have it in the show. Albert, let's show it now, just because Big Tuna has mentioned it. There is an Epstein and Trump statue in front of the Capitol building. I'm trying to think if I sent you the article or if I sent you. I don't think I.
Yeah, he has it. He has it.
You have it? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Albert will show it to you now. This is wild. That is.
Yeah.
It's
in honor of Friendship Day, and they're going to leave it up there until Sunday.
It's Epstein and Trump in kind of a, this is for those who are just listening and not seeing, in kind of, what would you call that?
Frolicking?
Yeah, kind of frolicking, holding hands with the other hand extended out and with, yeah, exactly. It looks like they're kind of skipping along almost. Yeah. And that's a great shot with the Capitol in the background. And it's on a marble
pedestal.
Yeah. I don't know if it's really marble or not, but it looks great. And then there's a plaque below. So something like, this is to memorialize the relationship between Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump. It's pretty crazy. So thank you, Big Tuna, for reminding us of that.
The plaque says, we celebrate the long-lasting bond between President Donald J. Trump and his closest friend, Jeffrey Epstein. That's what it says on the plaque.
That's really great. It's just really, really great. I've
never seen anything like it.
Yeah. Big Tuna also says, oh, this is on the, I'm just looking at this for the first time. The Big Tuna says they want to influence our youth at an impressionable time of their mental emotional development to mold them into followers of the regime. Project 2025. Yeah. Oh, that's the presence on high school campuses and also on the battle on a speech of all sorts. Yeah. I think that, I think that, everybody's trying to win everybody's hearts and minds, but you'd like to win the hearts and minds of the youth of America kind of in the form of ideas. If you end up a more conservative person, then all right, but let's at least make it a fair discussion of ideas. You end up, if you end up a tree hugger like myself, at least know the reasons that you're hugging those trees, etc. So Luis for the $5 super chat says, why do we continue to be shocked or act shocked and outraged at Donald Trump's incompetence? Are we suffering from some sort of global social Alzheimer's? Take some Tylenol, he says. Well, is it kind of a Stockholm syndrome?
Acetaminophen, commonly known as Tylenol.
Yeah, take some. And I think we're not shocked. Maybe we are. But I think the more we are exposed to the different forums, the different places, the different ways in which Donald Trump's extremism is manifested, I think, maybe we're sort of shocked over and over again. The media companies worried about free speech, says West Theory with a $5 super chat. Free speech and expression. They need to combine forces and campaign for Prop 50. Yeah. That's just not going to happen. That's just not going to happen. The media companies are afraid of taking a side. All right. Yesterday at this time, I had a chance to...
The Mark Thompson Show.
Yesterday, we're on at roughly the same time, Thom Hartmann and myself, and I'm a massive fan of Thom Hartmann. I just think he's a wonderful voice and perspective. His view of American history, his series of writings on American history are extraordinary and simple and accessible. And he writes on all things related to American life. So he has a new book, and I invited him in for a conversation. We had the conversation yesterday at this time, or a little after this time. And here it is now, the great Thom Hartmann. So check it out.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I'm pretty excited whenever this guy comes through our lives. He is my progressive North Star. How about it for the insanely brilliant Thom Hartmann, everyone? Congratulations on yet another book. How many is this for you, Thom Hartmann?
I don't know. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 35.
Insanely prolific. The latest is The Last American President. And this book is wonderful in bringing together not only history of Donald Trump, some of which I was really unaware of. You know, I kind of thought I know the origin story of Trump, and maybe a lot of us feel this way. But you have stuff in here that is, it speaks to his relationship with his father in very specific ways that sort of set the table for who he'll later be. And then just kind of a broader point, because I want to go back to that one, because maybe you can share a thing or two. But then you bring us into how he moves into an America that is already set up really for Donald Trump to exploit. And it's really almost an elegant story that you tell. So take me to his origin story again and share a couple of those specifics, if you would, please.
Sure. Donald, first of all, was a difficult child by all reports. And so his father ended up sending him to a military academy, not a real one, a pretend one, but it still, you know, it was like being in the military. And during the summer, when he would come home, his mother would leave and go to Scotland. She was a Scottish immigrant. Apparently, Trump men only marry immigrant women. I don't know what the deal is, but you know, so he had an apparent lack of maternal caring, and his father, according to his niece, you know, Mary Trump, was a psychopath, or at least a sociopath. Was, you know, badly disturbed man who just kind of beat into Donald Trump. I don't mean physically necessarily, but psychologically beat into him that you got to be a killer, you got to be a winner, you got to be on top. If you don't, you're a failure. You know, mediocre doesn't make it. And, you know, probably with the best of intentions, you know, trying to turn this bully, troubled kid into something, you know, good. But I think it damaged him quite badly. And you can see that, you know, when you know, he desperately needs attention and validation. He's just got this empty bucket, you know, his this hole in his heart, in his soul. And so he has, you know, his cabinet praise him. He has business leaders get together and they all have to praise him. He loves doing rallies because, you know, people tell him they love him and they applaud him. And these are the ways that he feels love. And it's really kind of a sad and tragic story of this very, very wounded man who then, after getting, you know, kind of escaping his father's, well, his father had Alzheimer's, ended up with Alzheimer's. After leaving his father, basically, he needed a new mentor. He's not smart the way that, you know, you would think of intellectual smart, but he is very streetwise and wily. And but he needed another mentor, and so he got introduced to Roy Cohn, and Roy Cohn, who you know, bragged about getting Ethel Rosenberg the electric chair just because it was fun. Who you know, just was the mob's lawyer. He was the lawyer for two different mob families in New York City. Just a real tough guy, a closeted gay man who went out of his way to destroy the careers of other gay men. And Roy Cohn taught him basically never admit that you made a mistake, never admit that you're wrong. When somebody comes after you, always attack them in a bigger way than they attack you. And
that pugnacity, that attack that Roy Cohn did. Sometimes when you're watching Trump when he's speaking, it really feels like you're watching Roy Cohn all over again.
Oh yeah, and Roy Cohn was, of course, Joe McCarthy's right-hand man. And what ultimately took Roy Cohn down was you know, that lawyer for the Army saying, you know, have you at last no decency, sir? And I think that's kind of the moment that we saw this last week with the Jimmy Kimmel thing, where the average American just kind of sat up and said, what? And I think it was very similar to that moment. It was a kind of a national awakening moment.
Oh, that's interesting. I'll double back to that maybe. So into this America, this Trump, who, you know, is again the result of crafted by a father who, was teaching him to be the attack dog, and you have you kind of lay out these interactions that he's had both with Roy Cohn and his dad, and then you talk about America and you talk about the ways in which America was changing and sort of becoming ripe for a guy like Trump to exploit, either wittingly or unwittingly, these kinds of aspects of America that seem to permit his dominance.
Yeah, a bunch of right-wing billionaires got together back in the 70s and funded basically a couple of different projects that were based on Lewis Powell's 1971 memo, suggesting that it was time for wealthy people and the businesses that made them wealthy to stop being apolitical and start getting into the political arena, and that they needed to take over media, they needed to take over education, they needed to take over, basically ultimately the government itself. And so a number of infrastructures were created with the goal of acquiring power that are now being used to not just extend that power, but take that power way beyond, I think, anything that the creators of these had in mind, frankly. Many of them have passed on now, including David Koch. Things like 1,500 right-wing radio stations, 3 right-wing television networks, a state policy institute in every single state, the Heritage Foundation, the Cato Institute, you just go on and on. There's literally nothing like this on the left. The left does not have a think tank in every state that's funded by billionaires. The left does not have an American Legislative Exchange Council where in every state around the country, the state legislators get together with lobbyists every year or twice a year, I believe, and basically write legislation for it to be introduced. The left has no 1,500 radio stations and 3 television networks. The closest we've got is MSNBC and Free Speech TV on the television side, and 1 station on Sirius XM, and a handful of kind of lefty broadcasters around the country. And
it's wild because, of course, the picture that the right effectively paints, apparently, is that left-wing dominance, left-wing radicals, media's all left, and all this sort of thing. I always talk about the media. Are you kidding? The tapestry of right-wing radio stations is immense. And as you suggested, I mean, I think there's just utter media dominance on the right.
Oh, absolutely. That wasn't the case when they started these campaigns in the 70s and 80s. But it's very much the case today. And so there was this entire right-wing ecosystem set up to support basically whoever was in power on the Republican side, as long as they would cut taxes for billionaires and deregulate industry. I mean, that's really what they wanted.
But you mentioned the book. Sorry to interrupt, Tom, but I was going to ask you if you could just, because I thought it was very interesting how you tied sort of the Southern strategy and the things associated with a kind of racism that was underpinning a lot of things. You tied that in also to sort of this evolution of the country that's led to this.
Yeah, Nixon, of course, two aspects of Nixon. One was the Southern strategy, which was, of course, in 1964 and 65, the Civil Rights and Voting Rights Act were passed and signed into law by President Lyndon Johnson, a Democrat, and passed through majority Democratic House and Senate. And so Nixon's Southern strategy was to reach out to those Southern Democrats who felt abandoned, the white racist Southern Democrats who felt abandoned by the Democratic Party because it had embraced those things. And in fact, I mean, it's quite successful. I believe that there has not been a Democratic presidential nominee who has won a majority of the white vote since Jimmy Carter, and maybe before that. I'd have to go back and look, but it's been a long time. And it's in large part because the Democrats basically said, we're no longer going to endorse racism and segregation and white supremacy. So that and then also the war on drugs. John Haldeman or John Ehrlichman rather, told a reporter just straight up, we had 2 enemies, the Nixon administration, the anti-war hippies and black people, and we couldn't make it illegal to be black or to be a hippie. So what we did was We heavily criminalized heroin and marijuana, which the black people and the hippies could be, used. And, we use that to disrupt their communities and break up their societies and culture and basically destroy them. And that's still going on. I mean, that's still going on. And in a way, I'd argue that what's going on with ICE right now is just kind of a reinvention of Nixon's war on drugs, only now it's a war on brown people.
Right. I was going to say it looks a lot like ICE. So then take us again into this nation that is changing, evolving. There are efforts to kind of wrest the political power from an emerging minority, or the growing political power from that emerging minority, and speak to then how Trump and Trumpism then gets to be woven into all that.
Yeah, Donald Trump himself, he has a lifelong history of racism and making racist comments, so he fit in very well with all this, and being the white supremacist candidate, and the white backlash to affirmative action, to DEI, to all this, basically just making America a more egalitarian country, is the wave that Trump has been riding, and the main wave. The other part of it is that when Reagan came into office in 1981, he undertook a project to deconstruct the American middle class. They felt that, and Russell Kirk laid this out in 1953 in his book, The Conservative Mind, they felt that the American middle class had gotten too fat and too wealthy, and therefore, their children were willing to protest in the streets. We got to do away with that. Let's throw all these kids into student debt, so they're not going to be protesting in the colleges. You had women who were, burning bras and declaring women's liberation in the 70s. Particularly after Roe v. Wade 73. And so we got to put the women back in their place by, Rush Limbaugh's rants about how women are taking your job, you white men, just like those black people were taking your job. And then, of course, go after the minorities. So, this kind of toxic soup just kind of became the Republican Party's shtick. And Trump was just better at it than anybody else. I mean, he was willing to say things out loud that other Republicans would never have said out loud. And frankly, some Republicans like, George Herbert Walker Bush would have been horrified by. But, but really was the dark underbelly of the GOP and of the conservative movement really itself, going all the way back to the late 1800s.
What's so interesting to me about that, Tom, is that, and I was just talking to a conservative yesterday. I had him on the show, served in the Bush administration, and he was saying he doesn't recognize his party, and that the MAGA is not the GOP, and I mean the typical thing that you hear. But what I think your book makes clear is that, hey, you guys set the table for this, and so this is sort of an outgrowth of the kind of thing that you guys were doing. And I think you also point to something else that I really wanted you to touch on here, and that is the oligarchical aspect of America becoming sort of completely unbridled, this plutocracy that we have seen birthed, because that's a big part of this too, I would think.
Absolutely. And that was part of Reagan's project to dismantle the middle class, to disempower the middle class, because, the middle class was, like I said, getting uppity in the 60s and 70s, and they just didn't want to have to deal with it. And making demands, that don't poison our food and stuff like that. So right. Yeah, it absolutely. And by the way, that they used that destruction of the middle class. I mean, Reagan declared a war on unions. 2/3 of us were unionized or had the equivalent of a union job. 1/3 of us had a union job. That set the wage floor for another third of us. So 2/3 of us had the equivalent of a good union job. So in 1981, when Reagan came into office, one salary could provide the standard middle class life, which is you buy a house, you buy a car every 2 or 3 years, you take a vacation every year, you put your kids through school, and you have enough money to retire, when you hit old age. And now it takes 2.3 salaries to do that. And that still doesn't put you in the middle class. We've gone from 2/3 of us being in the middle class in 1981 down to a little less than 50% of us in the middle class right now. And so what Trump did so deftly was say, yeah, you guys have been screwed. We all know you've been screwed, without acknowledging that it was Reaganism that did it, and saying, and it's the Democrats who did it to you. And it's kind of just a revival of the old shtick from the 1920s right up through the Southern Strategy, Nixon's Southern Strategy in the 70s, of the black people are taking your stuff, the black people are taking your job, the black people are taking the opportunities that should have been yours, the black people are taking your spot in college, et cetera, et cetera. And Trump was just really good at playing that card.
And you talk about this in the book too, that the playing of that card, playing different lies and repeating them. I mean, unapologetic repetition of these lies. And it's effective. In this media landscape particularly, Trump was so effective in just never blinking, in unflinching commitment to the lie.
Yeah. FDR pointed this out back in the day, that this is what Hitler did, was, never tell a small lie, always tell a big one, because the big one will be believed just by its very audacity, and then repeat it over and over and over again, and never admit that you're wrong and never back away from it. And that's what Donald Trump has been doing. I mean, the Washington Post documented over 30,000 lies he told during his first administration. But the big ones, the biggest one, of course, was that he lost the 2020 or that he didn't lose the 2020 election. But these big lies are just extraordinarily destructive to our society. And so you've got this, group of right-wing billionaires who really just wanted tax cuts and deregulation. They just wanted to get richer and richer and stay richer and richer. And they didn't like to be supporting the social safety net with their taxes. Basically paved the ground for neo-fascism, which, by the way, is what happened in Germany in the late 1920s and early 1930s.
The whole thing quacks a little like that, like the rise.
Yeah, Fritz Thyssen wrote a book. He was the wealthiest industrialist in Germany. He owned Thyssen Steelworks, and he wrote a book called "I Paid Hitler." He ended up having to flee the country with his family because Hitler turned on him. Dictators tend to turn on people if they're not completely compliant, and and he basically it was an apologia. So and my dad, when I was.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just gonna. I mean, it's so alarming. That narrative is so scary. You lay out this way in which you can sort of see this crescendo building, and I was so happy to see that at the end of your book, you do give us a route toward, all is not lost, and there is still a chance here, because it's a pretty grim picture of how we got here and sort of the institutions that seem to be protecting some of the grimmest stuff.
Yeah, and the voter suppression too. The ways that they're rigging democracy itself, voter suppression and gerrymandering, and they're now doing this right out in public, bragging about it even. But yeah, we need to remember, the promise of America, the values of America. We need to remind America of that as well as ourselves. And we need to reconnect with those values, and we need to fight for those values. It's Republicans love to talk about, they're all about values. Really, that's code for hating on queer people and black people, but and women. But it really is, at the end of the day, all about values. This, in fact, I think to a fairly large extent, one of the biggest mistakes Democrats are making, even right now, I just heard Hakeem Jeffries being interviewed on MSNBC, is that they're talking policy instead of values. Policy should flow out of values. The Republicans have been doing this for 40 years. They talk about values, and then they create policy that may or may not actually reflect those values, but they market it that way.
Yeah.
We love the value of prosperity. So how are we going to give you prosperity? We're going to cut taxes. We love the value of equality and opportunity in education. So how are we going to get there? We're going to do away with affirmative action. It's incredible. And the Democrats need to be doing this too. They need to start with values.
It is messaging, and politics has always been messaging. And, I was just reading this morning about how they're rebranding the big, beautiful bill because they're finding that people don't like the big, beautiful bill and all that's implied there. So now they want to rebrand it as with a tax cut, like a tax cut reference, biggest middle class tax cut bill,
Right.
It's look, of course, the whole thing is a lie. It's a scary time when I see the weaponization of the DOJ that just is right out in the open. And that's the one thing about Trump, is that there's no sleight of hand. Tom, he really does state it right out front. And it's remarkable to me that there is no pushback except for the fear that the GOP has of losing their power base, I'm talking about literally their job in Congress, in the Senate, in the House, wherever. I mean, these are people who are desperately hanging on to power, and now they're literally wearing these gold pins with Trump's face. The FCC chairman was wearing that the other day, and there was even something kicking around Washington about how all GOP will be asked to wear the gold pin with Trump. It was like this Maoist, weirdness that I thought it's insane. I mean, it just feels like one big. It would be laughable were it not so horrible.
There are 3 federal buildings now that have 40-foot tall pictures of Trump's face hanging from them. This is Saddam Hussein kind of stuff. And yeah, the little Mao pins. Brennan Carr was wearing one. You're right. It's a cult. It has become a cult, and that's what Trump wants. And frankly, I think, Mark, that's going to be his downfall. Is that he is actually telling people what he's doing, and he is he's demanding that Pam Bondi prosecute his political enemies. Excuse me. Dictators always go too far, and the question is, do they go too far before or after they've got the power to enforce it? And I don't think he yet has the power to enforce it, but he's damn close. I mean, he's got the Supreme Court. I believe he has them terrified. I wrote about this in my op-ed today, my Hartmann Report op-ed. I think the Supreme Court is absolutely terrified that he's going to do to them like he has done to over 100 federal judges that have ruled against him, are getting like pizzas delivered to them in the middle of the night by way of saying, we know where you are and we can kill you, just like we killed the son of Judge Esther Salas, federal Judge Esther Salas, who had ruled against him. And she was, and her son was murdered and her husband was shot by a young man dressed up as a FedEx delivery guy who was a volunteer in the Trump campaign. And, and the initial news reports said that he was actually a pizza delivery guy. And that's how this pizza thing started. But it's ongoing. And I think you've got 6 terrified members of the U.S. Supreme Court as well.
That's fascinating because the court, as you know, has pretty good protections. I mean, they have security that a lot of others who are public servants and are also exposed to that kind of thing don't have. But yet honestly, that's the first explanation I've heard that kind of makes sense as to why they are just such supplicants when it comes to almost anything Trump wants from them.
I think that's why they're doing it on the shadow docket too, because if you make a decision on the shadow docket, it's not precedent.
Sure.
So after Trump is gone, they can undo the damage that they're doing to the country. I think that's how they're rationalizing it to themselves. So
it's all of a kind and troubling. The book is really interesting because how we got here is fascinating, and there's a lot to it. And I didn't even get to the environmental stuff, which is bums me out to the end of the earth. You detail that, and it's sad because you say in your book, hey, first go around was, took us so far in terms of the war on the environment. And now it's really kind of apocalyptic.
Oh, yeah. And this morning at the United Nations, him saying, global warming is a hoax. Really? Climate change is a hoax.
Yeah, I mean, it was, and by the way, if you listen to him, Tom, it was like that was the greatest threat to the world is, alternative energy.
Right, windmills.
Yes, it was disgusting.
I think he believes it. I think he started out. You'll recall he had that group of fossil fuel billionaires and wealthy executives, multimillionaire executives in the room, and he said, "You guys give me $1 billion, and I'll do whatever you want." I'm not sure that they gave him $1 billion, but they gave him enough, and he's doing exactly what they want. And he's obviously listening to their scientists, and they do have a handful of scientists in their pockets who will, for an appropriate amount of money, tell you that there is no such thing as global warming, or it is, but it's not a big deal. The Earth has been warmer than this in the past, which is true, by the way. But this kind of, but this doing it, there weren't humans then, and doing it this way is going to create a disaster. I mean, it's so.
Well, I mean, the policy of taking something that's like 80% completed, that the wind farm off the East Coast, and just scrapping it. I mean, that's a grotesque.
Judge just reversed that, or just blocked him from blocking that.
So can that force then additional government funding, or will it just lie there?
Don't know. It's going to go to the Supreme Court, and it'll probably end up on the shadow docket, and they'll probably give it to Trump. We'll see. It's
just all of a grotesque kind. The Last American President is the book. Thom Hartmann, crazy about you and love it when you come through our world. So again, appreciate you making time, and thanks again, my friend.
It's always an honor and a pleasure to be on the program with you, Mark. Anytime.
All the best to you.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Love my Thom Hartmann. Love him. Really, really cool that he came on, and that book is really good. All of his stuff is just so accessible and great. So we'll have a link under this video. I know you're thinking we can't get it all in. How do they do it? It's a 2-hour show, and yet there's all this stuff there. We still have, it's The Planet Stupid, a look at the planet and the environment that we do every Wednesday. We'll get to that in just a second. I believe that Belinda left us a video today, so
she did, yeah.
So that'll be fun. I did want to get to a couple of comments, one of which is from Champagne Wishes, who says, Mark, the DOJ has always been used as a weapon. Okay, I'll grant you that, but you've never had a president say, I want my attorney general to go after these people. I know they're guilty, and fire attorneys general along the way to make the point. I mean, you've just never had it. This is unprecedented, all right? So the idea, I get it. The DOJ, government itself, has been weaponized along the way. I'd even say, and I would grant you this, that during the Biden administration, there were some selective prosecutions associated with Donald Trump. I mean, just the order in which things were brought, I thought was interesting. Although I thought the Trump administration, or Donald Trump personally, got a huge break from Merrick Garland, who slow-walked everything. I mean, these are such institutionalists. They were of that whole view, we don't want to go after them because then they'll go after us. And, we don't want it to look like a political persecution. They were so worried about the look. And then finally, after the congressional laying bare of what happened on J6, they were forced at the Justice Department to do something. So I think the notion that, the DOJ has always been used as a weapon, I get it. That's kind of a facile way to handle everything. Come on, government's always been flawed, blah, blah. Yeah. That really glosses over what's happening now. It's of another kind. I think you'd have to concede that. When have you had the president, calling out for specific prosecutions of his opponents and doing it openly? So I just won't concede that point as in any way, well, it's always been that way. No, it hasn't always been that way. Even as I recognize horrible abuses from the FBI, from the Justice Department, et cetera, and really awful abuses under other administrations. Kim, how do you want to do your news in relation to this?
Oh, well, let's do a little news, and then we'll go right to It's the Planet Stupid.
News first, and then It's the Planet Stupid. Smash the like
with your
button.
iron rod.
Do it like you mean it.
Smash it with your iron rod.
Thanks for the thumbs up, Kim's news, and then It's the Planet Stupid. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. This report is sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Jimmy Kimmel's return to late night, racking up millions of views online. There have been at least 15 million views on Instagram and YouTube of his monologue from last night. Late night TV host temporarily removed from his program by the Walt Disney Company's ABC television network for comments about Trump's reaction to the death of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. President Trump is now saying he can't believe ABC, quote, fake news gave Jimmy Kimmel his job back. Trump also indicating his administration might take action, legal action against ABC, saying Kimmel is an arm of the DNC, and that could be a major illegal campaign contribution. At least 2 detainees. One is in critical condition after a shooter opened fire on a Dallas ICE facility. That, according to Homeland Security. The shooter has reportedly been identified as 29-year-old Joshua John, Jahn. He was found dead from a self-inflicted wound at a nearby apartment building. And right now, the FBI is investigating the shooting as an act of targeted violence. The Department of Agriculture will receive help from Ben Carson to implement the Make America Healthy Again agenda.
Oh my God.
Ben Carson, isn't he the guy that was fired last time for ordering expensive furniture for the housing
he spent $1
administration?
million to redecorate. He wasn't fired for it. No. He was, but it was noted that he spent $1 million to redecorate his office.
No. Carson, who was the Housing and Urban Development Secretary.
No. He's a little late on that, but yeah.
Carson, who was the Housing and Urban Development Secretary during the first Trump administration, will now serve as a senior nutrition housing advisor. Senior nutrition and housing advisor.
I see.
So
okay.
On issues of nutrition and housing, he apparently is the expert.
Yeah.
The agency said Carson will also help implement the rural health policies related to nutrition, health, and housing. Carson says he's honored to work with Secretary Rollins on these important initiatives to help fulfill President Trump's vision for a healthier, stronger America.
Already calling his interior designer to, let's redecorate that office as a first move.
Morning.
Bring back the conference table.
Yeah.
California Governor Gavin Newsom appeared on Tuesday night's edition of The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. Newsom wasting no time going after President Trump and Republican-led redistricting efforts. He spoke about Proposition 50, meant to counteract Republican-led efforts to redraw congressional districts in Texas. He also spoke about the bill he recently signed into law that will ban law enforcement, including ICE agents, although enforcing the law against federal agents, iffy, from covering their faces. Newsom and Colbert poked fun at the governor's social media posts mocking President Trump's style of tweeting or posting on social media as well.
I think John Rothmann was onto something. We talked earlier about Gavin Newsom, why he's doing certain things that seem maybe futile or, sort of destined not to really prevail. For example, I think the mask policy, the idea, I think it's a righteous battle, not allowing these ICE agents to wear these masks as they go on these raids. But and it creates all kinds of problem that they're wearing these masks. But that said, it's likely that the feds will just, Bigfoot the states on this. But and this is the point, it is making clear the fact that Gavin Newsom is doing something. He's not just rhetorically pushing back. So the frustration that many feel is, how come the Democrats don't do something? Gavin can at least say, and I call him Gavin, I've never met him. I've met him, actually. I don't really know him. But he can say, hey, I'm not just, talking. I'm trying to do things in my own state.
Yes, it's all true. I've met him as well. American shoppers are pointing at the cost of groceries as being a major source of stress in their life. Hey, I thought that was supposed to be fixed in the last election, Mark. What happened? What happened? The sentiment comes as data from the Consumer Price Index shows grocery prices rising 0.6% from July to August, marking the steepest one-month gain in roughly 3 years. Groceries are now 2.7% higher than a year ago, grocery prices, and up nearly 30% from before the pandemic.
So they rose a little over a percentage point, a little over half a percentage point, is what you're saying. 0.6%. Okay.
Mm-hmm. The owners of Camp Mystic in Texas say they will be reopening next summer. 27 young girls and counselors died at that summer camp in July during flooding in the Hill Country. New York Times reporting the owners announced the decision in 2 emails sent hours apart yesterday. There are plans to build a memorial at the camp, but families of the victims are against it, saying they were never consulted and they don't approve of it. Out of 500,000 products sold and distributed on Amazon are being recalled. I'll say 500,000, not out of, but 500,000. This is according to the Consumer Product Safety Commission. Items affected by this recall include power banks, children's helmets, that's a problem, dressers, portable fans, and crib mobiles and baby loungers. Safety concerns range from fire hazards to the risk of suffocation and injury. So if you're an Amazon customer, check the list of recalls to make sure you don't
My
have
bad. I'm sorry.
Yeah, whoopsies. The White House is unveiling its new Presidential Walk of Fame. The collection, positioned right outside the Oval Office, features portraits of U.S. presidents with the exception of former President Biden. They don't want him up there.
I'm guessing Obama's not in there, but maybe he is.
I think he's up on the top of the staircase in an out-of-the-way area.
I see where you can't see it,
For
yeah.
former President Biden, the White House opted to use a framed photo of an auto pen, writing his signature. Isn't that classy? President Trump and his allies have focused on Biden's alleged use of the auto pen, which can be used to sign official documents in place of the manual signature, and raised questions about his cognitive abilities while in office. But I'll say that Trump uses that auto pen as well. So what does that say?
I mean, I just don't understand. It's such they have to troll Biden like all the time. God, guys, get down to some work. Does anybody do any work over there? You're on this jihad against, all of his enemies, and you're still tilling the Biden soil over and over again. God, get to work on the ballroom or whatever other bullshit you got going. It's just absolutely crazy, man. Just frustrating.
NASA's first mission to orbit the moon in more than 50 years could launch sooner than expected. According to NASA's acting deputy associate director, the Artemis 2 mission is scheduled to launch no later than April of 2026, but could launch as soon as February of 2026. And if the mission is successful, NASA aims to launch Artemis 3 in 2027, which would put people back on the moon for the first time since the Apollo era. And lastly, Las Vegas is home to the #1 coffee shop in the nation. According to Yelp reviews, Yaw Farm Coffee Roaster, YAW, Yaw Farm Coffee Roaster, takes the top spot on Yelp's list of best reviewed coffee shops with 95% 5-star reviews. Coming in at number 2 is 1022 Cafe in Oceanside, California, followed by Rainbow Joe's on the Hawaiian island of Kauai and Mate Conmigo in Los Angeles. Clearly, they have not been to Coachella Valley Coffee.
Well, no. Coachella Valley Coffee is just it's a roastery, but it's not a place you can't drink a coffee. They have
a new one. It's at the Palm Springs Airport. I just saw them. Yeah, they just put it in. So super cool. And if they had gone there, they would have posted that as #1 because clearly 'tis the best. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. They've got the Lion's Mane coffee, which my husband is loving. I still cannot live without my vanilla tea. Have to have it.
I love that Kim was actually trying to segue into a kind of sponsor mention, and I was jamming her with the But sorry about that. Yeah, you were trying to go. Right. Please continue. Then I have a follow-up question about this coffee place that we're seeing. But
My bad. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
you weren't following where I was. You weren't buying what I was selling.
No.
I need you to be on board with this.
No.
Mark's favorite is what? The Ocotillo Espresso?
I like the Ocotillo Espresso. I love the Sunrise blend. I love the El Gato. And of course, I love the Clarity. Those are all really, really good. I mean, it's all so good. Best coffee I've ever tasted. And as I say, I've had coffee all around the known world. I've had it in the most exotic locations, and poured from the most elegant dispensers. And I assure you, this is the finest coffee I've ever tasted. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com.
Please use the code MARKT, no spaces, MARKT at checkout for the exclusive Mark Thompson Show discount. You get 10% off for popping in that little code.
Now I want to go back to that picture of that place, Albert. Go back to so the you're saying that now, based on Yelp reviews, people like drinking coffee at this place, this particular.
This was the #1 place. Yaw.
Yeah, the #1 place. Yaw.
Yaw Farm Coffee Roaster in Vegas.
Oh. Wow. And it's based on their reviews.
Based on their reviews. Yes, they get a 95.5 star rating.
Oh, so it's not necessarily the coffee they're pouring. It's just sort of the place,
like
or it's
it.
kind of like the ambiance, or
Well, I would imagine if they had sucky coffee, they wouldn't get good reviews.
sure,
So
it's probably a mix of those things.
yeah,
You're right. Yeah,
yeah, it's a whole package.
I get it. Okay,
Yeah,
interesting. Well, we
yeah,
love our Coachella Valley coffee. Yes,
we
as I
do.
say, best coffee on earth.
And
Well
if you're
done,
flying
Kim.
if you're flying into Palm Springs, stop by.
Oh
and,
my God,
get
yes.
a
And
little
they do have
cuppa.
outlets, like they'll,
Mhm.
I think they do, they're the official coffee of like the arena there in Palm Springs. As they do, you can imagine a lot of the desert footprint of Coachella Valley coffee is pretty strong. If you go to the desert, Palm Springs, you'll see it in a lot of places. So
But you don't have to. You can just go to the website, CoachellaValleyCoffee.com.
yeah, you'll get the 10% off through the website if you use our code MARK-T. Yeah.
I'm Kim
Vietnamese
McAllister.
coffee. Has anybody ever enjoyed a cup? Are you kidding, Big E61? I just told you I've had coffee in the most exotic locales, in the most exotic ways, most certainly. Vietnamese coffee. There's a big Vietnamese
It is so
community.
good.
Yeah,
It's my
so
favorite.
good. It's so
How
good.
does Vietnamese coffee stand up to Kona coffee?
They're both
your
good.
world
They're both
travels?
really good.
Yeah.
They're both good. If you have the true Vietnamese coffee, they have the condensed milk at the bottom, and they have super strong bitter coffee that mixes in with it. So
it is like they build in the like the cream or the milk, as Albert says. Yeah, they build it in, so you don't have it black. So yeah, it's a little different. Anyway, any other questions? Coffee questions?
This is the Mark Thompson Show.
All right.
Yes, I'm very unhappy with everything I've heard today on your show.
I am so excited that we have our Wednesday show. I will just tell you in this moment, tomorrow, Sarah Kendzior joins. Is that right, Kim? It's pretty big.
What?
Yeah, looking forward to that. Yeah.
And this is the maiden voyage of what appears to be a regularly scheduled appearance from Sarah Kendzior. She becomes now one of the Mark Thompson Show's stable of guests.
I want to say that to me, that's like Christmas coming early, man.
Yeah.
I think Sarah Kendzior is brilliant. I think she's a brilliant writer. I think she's a brilliant mind. I think she is she throws heat. It is exciting to have Sarah Kendzior on the show at all, and the notion that she'll be on regularly is super great. And Kim, if you're the person to thank, then I want to thank you, because I think you are the Sarah Whisperer on this, and I thank you.
Thank you.
4 thank yous. So
I'm just really excited that she's agreed to do it, because we're at a moment in we're in a free speech era where it's scary right now to come on any public venue and speak your mind and speak your truth and say what you really feel. It would be, I mean, and I know that she's a published author and this is not her first rodeo, but still at this moment, when people are being, I would say, persecuted for free speech rights, it's very brave of her to say, yeah, I'll come on with you, I'll do this, and I'll do it regularly.
she used to have a podcast, and she's no stranger to the spotlight, and she's courageous. She's really courageous. So you're right. At a time that one could pull back, in a way, I'm not surprised that she's leaning in. She's just the best. I really, you can tell. I'm just super excited that she'll be with us. So, all right, that'll be tomorrow. But now, on Wednesdays, we like to take a look at the environment, take a look at the planet. We do it in a segment called It's the Planet, Stupid.
The planet Earth.
Some call me nature.
I am very passionate about the planet.
A living, breathing planet capable of sustaining whatever life forms we see fit to deposit on it.
Spock, judging by the pollution content of the atmosphere, I believe we have arrived.
It's the planet, stupid. No. It's the planet, stupid.
Our guide for It's the Planet, Stupid, Belinda Weymouth, is on the road. When she comes back, we'll get her reactions to the Donald Trump speech at the UN, which did have a lot to do with the environment and climate, but she offered up this video presentation of where she is and what she's doing.
Hello everyone from Black Canyon of the Gunnison National Park. Kim, is this wild enough for you? This is a 2,700 foot drop. That's the South Rim over there, which really sadly, I don't know if you can see, but fire came through a couple of months ago. So the vegetation is gone from the South Rim. And if we pan around over here and look at the North Rim, you can see how lush and fabulous it is. There is oak and all kinds of things. We've just been hiking over there. So Colorado, it's gorgeous. It's the planet, stupid.
Is that it? I loved it. But I wanted more.
I know, it's short and sweet, but it's awesome. And I love how she ended it. It's the planet, stupid. Love it.
It's pretty terrific. That is, it's the planet, stupid for today.
More.
It's the planet, stupid. No. It's the planet, stupid.
Next time, only on The Mark Thompson Show.
Wow. Yeah, there you go.
I've told you it's never easy being in this business.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah, right on, everybody. I'll finish up. I just don't want to leave without bringing your attention to my favorite Department of War head, Pete Hegseth. Did you see the latest out of the Pentagon? You know, he runs the Pentagon. And Pete Hegseth is now dismantling, I believe, something that has been there at the Pentagon for some time. He's disbanding the advisory committee on women in the military. It's a 75-year-old advisory committee aimed at encouraging and retaining women in the armed forces. And this is something that's been quite successful. I mean, you know, you've seen women rise to the highest ranks of the military and serve so honorably alongside men in the military. And the military's had issues with the way that they have integrated women into the armed forces. But in any case, it's this a 75-year-old advisory committee. They're always working on the ways in which they can, from a strategic standpoint, you know, integrate women into the military. No more, though. No more. They are a group accused of promoting a divisive feminist agenda, according to Pentagon officials. The decision to disband the Defense Advisory Committee on Women in the Services was made by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. He did it over a gin and tonic on a Tuesday, and the committee is focused on advancing divisive feminist agenda that he says hurts combat readiness. And the department is advancing uniform sex-neutral standards across the department. That's a quote from the Pentagon statement. The acting deputy press secretary defending the decision to disband this group, suggesting that the committee was no longer needed because everything is fixed, you see, at the Pentagon. There are no more issues. So let's get that wokeness out of things.
Is that why there was such a horrible problem in our last military conflict, and I don't know if it's even ongoing, with assaults against women in the military?
Well, the assaults against, are you talking about sexual assaults on women?
I am.
Yeah, well, sexual assaults on women.
Trying not to get demonetized, but yeah.
Well, no, it's a huge issue, and I was kind of speaking about that as well, because it's a huge issue in the military. It's almost the issue in the military when it comes to women, and there are no ways in which women can seek any kind of justice oftentimes for these sorts of incidents because they report them to their supervisors, and oftentimes the incidents involve their supervisors. But that isn't mentioned in all of this. It's just mentioned as this group as no longer needed.
Yeah.
The panel existed during the last administration's recruitment and retention crisis, is what the Pentagon says now. With female recruitment numbers soaring under President Trump and Pete Hegseth's leadership, it is clear that this group is not the reason women are joining the military. They go on in the statement. The Pentagon added, "We are cleansing the Department of Wokeness." The committee was established in 1951, making it one of the Defense Department's oldest advisory bodies. And it's composed of civilian women and men appointed by the Defense Secretary to advise on matters and policies related to the recruitment, retention, employment integration and well-being of women in the military. So this is a cultural overhaul of the military that's been going on, as you know. They want to remove what they call left-leaning ideology from the military. And among the changes imposed by Hegseth are grooming standards to be clean-shaven and neat in presentation, banning transgender Americans from serving in the armed forces, tightening restrictions on media coverage, and eliminating diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, among others.
So would this then be the MAGA army? If you're trying to weed out any others, people of color, people that are trans, people that are gay, people that are women, if you're trying to keep it, the way they want it, which is you all believe like us, you look this, you have no facial hair, you look the same, you're all like Trump happy, then does it cease to become the American military fighting for America? Are they instead fighting for Trump instead?
Well, I mean, I don't know. That's an interesting recharacterization of it, or characterization of it. It might be accurate. I mean, I'd say that it's certainly true that the diversity that has represented the military over the last 20 years doesn't appear to be a priority anyway with this administration. I think that's important. I don't mean to diminish it, but I think the more provocative and ironic issue is one that you first mentioned, which was that women in the military have been preyed upon.
Mhm.
And oddly, the guy who runs the military, Pete Hegseth, one of the big issues with him is that he was accused of sexual assault. He paid as you know, he paid a woman who had accused him of sexual assault to kind of go away. And this all came out in his confirmation hearing.
Yeah.
And then ultimately the Senate rolled over and gave him the green light anyway. But
They don't care. They don't care about women. They don't care about women at all. But I worry that if you weed out the others, if you weed out the woke, then you weed out any voices of dissent. And what are you left with?
You're left with an army that doesn't give you any trouble, Kim. That's what you're left with.
That's
Yeah,
what you're left
get rid
with.
of those dissenters. Let me look at some. I got notification that Hulu ads are going from $7.99 to $11.99. Here's some news you can use from Teacher Lori. Huge increase, 50% increase.
Yeah, they jacked up the price right at the moment where people would resubscribe after unsubscribing, and now people are thinking, I know Jimmy's back, but do I really want to pay extra? I don't know.
Yeah, I would just note this, Teacher Lori. I know you're a teacher and all, but $7.99 to $11.99 is not 50%. So I don't know. I mean, I'm with you on this, but am I wrong? Maybe I'm wrong. $8 to $12. Is not 50%, but I take your point. I don't mean to get off on that. I want people who are listening to know I didn't say 50%. Teacher Lori said 50%. Because I'm weak enough with numbers, but I know it's not 50%. But that's just horrible. I mean, look, everything's getting more expensive. This is the rapture, says Luis, is another evil plot by the radical left. But like the Jewish space laser and weather controlling machine, it will fall. Yours, Imbecile, from Marjorie Taylor Greene. He writes that he signs at MTG. Yes. I think the rapture can cleanly be in the category of the space lasers. Yes. Former FBI Director James Comey is expected to be indicted in the Eastern District of Virginia in the coming days, according to MSNBC, says Yaha. Lying to Congress being at least one charge. Here's the irony of that. Donald Trump would not have won the last election, the one that he won in 2016, the last administration that he had, season one of the Trump administration, if it weren't for James Comey. I think James Comey won that election for him. Reopening the announcement, they were reopening the investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails. Mm-hmm. That announcement, I believe, siphoned off enough votes, made enough people not a little, tentative. I mean, the election was decided by 58,000 votes, maybe fewer than that. It's 48,000. So The idea somehow that you then go on the jihad against Comey is, to me, ironic. Luis says this, thanks for a $5 super chat. For a dude who is so critical of others and their use of the English language, exception to, quote, be best, Melania, his command of English sure does suck. Yes. Oh, hashtag Tylenol.
I said Minifin, commonly known as Tylenol.
Yeah. But my thing on that was, anybody could screw up those medicine names. I get it. But that's the only thing you're there to talk about. You're there having this announcement about one thing. It's acetaminophen. It's the only thing we're talking about. It's not going to be like a lot of stuff you're talking about. Just that one thing. You'd think you'd get clear on the one thing you're going to be talking about. So I was surprised for that reason. Where it just like, he's reaching for something. Anybody could screw that up. But I think you're only going to...
Minifin, commonly known as Tylenol.
And so it was an odd thing to me from that standpoint. Sarah K for a win. Yeah, big win, says Steve607. Sarah Kenzior joins tomorrow. We're so excited about that. Grocery prices are definitely higher, says Rick S. Yeah, I mean, there's no question about that. I think the inflation at the grocery store is where you're really noticing it, and so bizarre that he was able to sell some plan to lower prices when there was just no strategy there. He was just screaming from the podium. But, enough of America bought it. Most in America barely pay attention. It's a really, and now that the NFL season has started, I don't even get anybody's attention for anything. I mean, everybody's on DraftKings, you know what I mean? Join ICE, says Yaha. Arrest your landscaper. Yeah, right. I mean, that's what it's come down to, isn't it? Sad. I laugh, but it's so sad. Tomorrow, as I mentioned, the brilliant and wonderful Sarah Kenzior joins. We're so excited to have her. And also, the brilliant former federal prosecutor David Katz joins us. So we have a lot to talk about. The weaponizing of the DOJ and more. And we'll see you all tomorrow.
I'm Shadow Stevens for The Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
Share any portions of the show across Facebook, across your social media, and don't forget to join Kim for the after party. Thanks, everybody. Until tomorrow. Bye-bye.